This is Central Time. I'm Rob Farrett.
And I'm Veronica Rueckert. We're talking about Gamergate right now, the culture war that's going on between those saying there's a problem with journalistic ethics in the gaming community and women and others who are trying to push the envelope on what gaming is. Constance Steinkuehler is with us, President Obama's former video game czar and the co-director of the Games and Learning Center at the Wisconsin Institutes of Discovery.
And you can join us at 800-642-1234. Are you a gamer? Do you play computer games, video games, massive online games? What do you think the scene is like for women there? Call in at 800-642-1234. That's 800-642-1234, or email talk@wpr.org.
We're going to go to our phones right now. Katie is first from Green Bay. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Veronica and Rob, and Constance, thank you so much for this important topic. It's so interesting, especially as a parallel to the recent discussions about the viral video of the young woman with the cat calls and just encouraging public dialogue about what is acceptable of women. And I think the backlash is most telling in both cases of people coming back and stating that, these women just need to have a sense of humor or not put themselves in such situations. What do you think, Constance, has been, your biggest takeaway from all of this? The positivity of the conversations being had, or the negative comments being made toward females in these particular situations?
Okay, thank you for that question, Katie. Katie drawing parallels between that and a viral video of a woman walking the streets of New York and documenting all of the catcalls that she got from men and others as she walked, and raising some issues about women's equality right now, among other things. What do you think, Constance?
Yeah, thanks for the great dialogue. What a good question. I mean, I have to be honest. As a woman in the games industry and sort of game culture scene, I consider myself a gamer. The ideas of having to prove if I'm gamer enough is certainly not new to me. But the amount of just fervor is really surprising still. And I think it's been really surprising for the people who have been attacked and for the people on the sidelines as well. One thing that has been a little bit crushing for me in this conversation, to be honest with you, and the audience here, is that a lot of our leadership in the games industry itself and across the nation, who I know are not speaking out. And when isolated events happen where a man or two speaks out about this issue, nothing happens. But when a woman tries to stand up to defend herself or defend her colleagues, she's being absolutely attacked and slaughtered in pretty frightful ways. So I have been finding that really difficult, right? I mean, where is our leadership within the industry to show up and actually say that this is not what we're about, it hasn't ever been what we're about, and that this is inappropriate behavior? When I have probed this behind the scenes, and tried to query what are we doing and why aren't we doing more? Why aren't more people speaking out? What I find is that, there's this old adage on the internet, that don't feed the trolls. So a lot of the attitude is not because people don't care, but in fact that, there's this dynamic of anonymity and just mass outpouring online. And, the general feeling is that the more energy you give it, the more it just continues on and there's no way to really fight it. So I do feel like my biggest concern right now, I guess it's a conflation of, some issues in gender that seem to really be percolating nationwide, and internet culture and lack of civility.
And you're on the show right now, and given the threats that we've detailed against some of the women who have spoken out, Brianna Wu and Anita Sarkeesian, are you worried being on the show today? Are you worried about what might happen?
Well, I have to be honest, I am in many ways their worst nightmare. I've spent my entire career dedicated to diversification of the medium, specifically how games as a medium should be used for intellectual work, problem solving, behavior change, cognitive change, etc. I'm also the person that defended the games industry to the Vice President of the United States and stood up and said, look, games are not tied to violent behavior. This is not an argument that pans out nationwide, and that this is a medium of expression with incredible potential. Personally, am I afraid? I mean, sure I am, but I also feel like I'm a tenured professor in a magnificent state in the Midwest with a really supportive network of professional colleagues and a family that stands behind me. If I can't stand out on this issue, how can I possibly expect Zoe Quinn to stand out? How can I expect someone who works in the industry or writes for freelance? So, to me, I sort of feel like the risks that I take are far less than someone who's actually working as a freelance writer or freelance designer.
Okay, let's get another call in on this. Wes is joining us from Minocqua. Hi, Wes.
Hi. Are you there?
Yeah, you're on the air.
I play Call of Duty, Advanced Warfare, the new one on Xbox One.
Mm-hmm.
And just women get it on. Women I hear playing, and they are so much better than I am. But just the anger and the horrible language that I hear online, I think I've had enough of it sometimes, and I can't play. And it gets to be a lot, and it gets to be kind of frightening when you hear a kid playing and all of a sudden he starts crying because people will not leave him alone. It's like another form of bullying, but in the 21st century, it seems worse, I think. I don't know.
Okay, thank you so much, Wes. And question, he's getting it there. You know, the video game industry has been striving for a long time for legitimacy and to be viewed as an art form. Is this going to have serious long-term consequences for that?
Well, yeah, I mean, first off, I just have to say, I've been there. I know what you're talking about. There are moments in which you just think, am I really going to be part of this culture, or at least this part of this culture? It's like with any piece of medium. Think about television or movies, right? There are amazing forms of television. There's Sesame Street for children. There's science shows for adults. There's Sopranos, which is not appropriate for kids, but it's certainly fantastic TV. There's a whole gamut of what we do around media, and games are no different. I can't help but feel like, first, all the gamers I know really are much more like you than the people who are calling out for hoping that, the last woman who spoke out commits suicide out of the harassment they give her, which are posts that you see online right now on Infinity Chan. I think they're a lot more like you or like me. The overwhelming majority of gamers are not interested in this, don't like it, and don't want to be part of it. But part of that means that we have to stand up to it and say, dude, back off. Like, speaking up and saying there's a basic level of civility that we have to insist upon. And I don't think that necessarily can happen through legislation. I think that has to happen as a community of players. One thing to keep in mind for the non-gaming audience is that talking about gamers in one fell swoop just no longer makes sense, because there are so many different genres of games. And now, in order to talk about game culture or game community, you really have to specify what platform you're talking about. What game are you talking about? World of Warcraft players are nothing like the players of, Threes or Two Dots or Bejeweled. So, maybe it's a matter of we as communities of gamers have to stand up and decide what our community is going to be like.
Constance, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
That was Constance Steinkuehler, co-director of the Games and Learning Society Center at the UW-Madison. She was also Obama's former video game czar.
Coming up after the news, after a crash that killed one pilot,